Good afternoon. I'm sorry, but I'd rather be down there. Okay. I hope you don't mind, but this is too formal for me. I'm showing a few slides, no? And I entitled it last night when I was writing this. Actually, gusto na nga namin mag-move on, no? Because that is what the Marcos loyalists keep telling us, no? And I'll tell you a little about the book, no? Subversive Lives. Actually, it's a story about our family. So the first slide, please. Okay, this is a picture of Bongbong Marcos, and I think that is Amy with a wig. And while the Marcos family partied and spent the Filipinos' money, Negros then, in 1985, was struck by famine. And I don't know if people here remember this, at least those who are about my age might have remembered seeing this on the newspapers, but for the most part, nearly 1 million people in Negros suffered because of the famine. No? And this boy, Joel Abong, actually died of malnutrition. During this time, it was also the time when the Marcos family had a party on the yacht, Pangulo, and they were partying because it was Irene Marcos's birthday. And there was a guy who jumped out of a cake, and they were singing "We Are the World." I think you've seen the video on YouTube, no? And they were singing "We Are the World." We are a song that was meant for a famine-stricken Africa at that point. Whereas right at that same time, the famine was also in Negros, and yet they were really oblivious to it. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and this is a funny picture of Marcos, the only guy without the shirt, and Imelda playing chess with chess master Bobby Fischer. No? So during this time, they were having a lot of visitors, dignitaries, and a lot of Hollywood people coming into Malacanang partying. Okay, next po. Next slide, please. Next slide po. Okay. Okay, Subversive Lives and my link to martial law. When we speak of martial law, immediately I go into my family history because I cannot separate the family history with that of martial law. So this is my family, and I'm the little girl between my parents, the youngest of 10 children. No? And of the 10 children, seven members of my family joined the underground movement against Marcos. We didn't start out as activists. Most of my brothers, like the next one, next slide po. This is Ronald John, the guy with the white shirt, and he was a Philippine Science high school student. And I'm sorry if you've heard this story because I tell it to the media and I tell it on TV, but just a little bit about Ronald John, please. He was a scholar, like all the students at the Philippine Science High School, and he was actually batch number 4. And at that point, when they got in, he was 12 when he got into Philippine Science High School, and it was a very bad time because the building behind him, which is the current Philippine Science High School building, was non-existent. And actually, they were just having classes inside an old warehouse, and he said the roof would leak, and they would be catching the water from the roof when it rains, and there were hardly any chairs that had 4 legs. And when they had to do science experiments, they would need bottles of Coke and use it for, then the bottles of Coke were breakable, and that was the test tube. No? And there was one Bunsen burner for 25 people in the class, nakapila pa sila. No? So when they were complaining that the Philippine Science High School had no chairs, no tables, no equipment, the principal then said, "Wag kayo sa akin, okay lang ba magtagalog?" Okay na, no? Oo. The principal then said, "Don't look at me, I'm just, a government employee. Doon kayo sa Malacanang mag-rally." And that was the beginning of how he became an activist. No? What happened to Ronald John was, when martial law was declared in 1972, the student leaders were automatically hunted down, whether or not you were an activist or not. He was then He was arrested because also at that point, in any university, high school, or college, you could not meet. If you were two people, you could talk and meet. Pero the minute tatlo na kayo, illegal assembly na yon. No, I don't know if you know that. So kung nag-meeting kayo kasi may test kayo sa chemistry at nagpapaturo ka sa kasama mo, if you met at tatlo kayo, wala na. No? Pwede na kayong hulihin. And the military was always on campus. So Ronald John and two other boys and one girl went to the house of Marie Hilaw, a classmate. And there they were studying for an exam. They were meeting. And what happened was at 2 in the afternoon or so, somebody was banging on the gates. And when they opened the gate, it was a team of military men from the from KANU, no, the Constabulary Anti-Narcotics Unit. And there was no drugs on board, but all the military and the police were then looking for student activists. Why? Because there was a hunt down, a hunt for all the activists, and there was a prize. I think the price was 5,000 per activist that you caught. So John was there, 19 years old, a freshman then in UP, and tinignan siya, at ang sabi sa kanya, uy, ito, chinito, maputi, mukhang Chinese. And because he looked Chinese, ang mga Chinese taga-People's Republic of China. At ang mga taga-People's Republic of China, komunista. And because he had glasses, sabi nila, mukhang matalino, kinapkapan yung likod, no? And they found a UP ID and they said, oh, matalino nga, taga-UP. And for being matalino, a UP student with an ID, with glasses, chinito, he was tortured. That was the only thing that he did wrong. How was he tortured? Dinala siya dun sa likod ng bahay, binugbog. The three other people who were arrested with him were also manhandled. And naihi yung isa, sabi ng isa, pwede ba hong umihi? So the military men had an idea and they filled a commode with urine, tapos dinunk yung head nila. No? At that night, merong curfew, hindi na umuwi si John. And we didn't know that he was already arrested and was at Camp Crame. In Camp Crame, he was stripped, naked, no? Pati yung briefs, tied to an armchair, handcuffed to an armchair, and then meron siyang blindfold so he couldn't identify his military captors. And very hot par lamps, yung spotlight lamps, dalawa, mga 2 inches away from his face. Okay, so very, very hot. Sabi niya, if you poke my face, parang lechon, kasi sunog na sunog na. It went on for 5 days. Okay? And because he did not give the right answer, whatever the right answer was, kasi sabi, sinong kasama mo sa revolusyon? So ang sabi niya, ano hong revolusyon? No? So they would clap his ears. Clapping is, they do that to your ears, no? Very strongly. And for every wrong answer, he would get boxed or they would clap his ears. And because he kept giving the wrong answers, they eventually wet his feet. Remember, he was naked. Wet his feet, and then they tied a live wire to his penis and electrocuted him. Okay? When he still did not give the right answer, they took a syringe and filled it with water and injected it into his testicles. No? And so that went on for several days. It was very there was a method to it because they would stop only when they felt that you couldn't handle the pain anymore, no? Or that you might die from the electrocution. So one of the people that he was arrested with was the first detainee who died under martial law, and this was Liliosa Hilaw. That's another long story, but we've also put it in the book Subversive Lives. What happened to Ronald was when he was released later on, 5 months later, he went back to school after a few months, very traumatized. He would fall off his bed, he would be screaming and kicking at night, and then he would fall off his bed. Wala naman psychologist dun eh. I mean, we couldn't afford any. So after a while, he went back to school, went back to UP Geology. He did not become an activist, ayaw niya na. He studied, no? He studied and finished his course. One day in October, 4 years later, 1977, he had his jacket and he told me, Susan, kakain ako dito mamayang gabi. Pagtirhan niyo ako ng pagkain. And he never came home. Okay, that was 1977. Okay, next slide po. This is the last picture we have of him. He's the guy with the glasses on the extreme right. And friends say that they still saw him on buses alone or in carinderias near UP alone. And every time somebody would come and say to him, Uy, musta na Ronald, no? He would say, don't talk to me, I don't know you, no? And it seems what they did to him was they took him and used him as a tracer. Ibig sabihin, they'll put you in a bus, they'll put you in a cafe, they'll put you in a carinderia, and whoever talks to you also gets picked up. After a month that he was spotted in places like this, he disappeared, no? And to this day, we don't have a body to mourn. And I usually say to the press, buti pa si Marcos may bangkay, kami wala. We cannot even mourn his death, no? Next slide po. This is June Kimpo, another brother, brother number 9, also a UP student. He joined a rally and was picked up. There were 200 who were picked up that day, and all 199 were freed, and they kept him. Why? Because they found a UP ID on him, and it said the word Kimpo, our last name. And he was apprehended and tortured because of his last name, because at that point, 4 other siblings had already been incarcerated. Okay? After his detention, galit na siya. Marcos was the biggest recruiter for the communists, and June joined the NPAs, no, the New People's Army. In 1981, we just had word that his body was in a morgue in Muñoz, Nueva Ecija. My sisters went to get his body, and they told me, Susan, when you enter the morgues, there were bodies all over, on the floor, on the desk. There wasn't a chair that didn't have a sprawled body on it, unclaimed. Because if you claim the body, they will say, NPA yan eh, siguro NPA sympathizer ka, tapos huhulihin ka rin. And that is how they found my brother. Next slide po. This is June Kimpo, age 24, with 7 gunshot wounds, 1 shot close range in his head, no? Ronald John, when he disappeared, my other brother was 23. June was 24. Next slide po. Lilian Kimpo, my sister, also incarcerated and tortured, sexually molested, no? She was brought to several camps, at least 3 or 4 military camps. They bring you from one camp to the other, tino-torture ka in each one, so that pag natapos na isang team, they'll torture you again in another area so that you share the information that you have so they can capture more activists. Next slide po. Norman, no? This is Norman Kimpo, my brother, who's a professor at Ateneo when he was caught. And he also spent time in Bonifacio, Camp Bonifacio, but was not harmed because the Jesuits thankfully came to his aid immediately and said, you touch this guy and the Catholic Church will be upon you. Okay, so he was spared from the torture. Next slide po. Nathan, that's my mom with Nathan Kimpo. Nathan was valedictorian, grade school and high school. There was one time I was digging out a box from my aparador, and I found a box of medals, 72 medals, all with Nathan's name, no? So he was that smart. What happened to Nathan? Also arrested, incarcerated for the first year, 1 year, and then he moved to Cebu. He was meeting with a group of students in a classroom. They enter, at tinutukan na lang siya ng barel ng tatlo, at sinabi nila, walang warrants of arresto ha. That time, nobody had a warrant of arrest, they just took you. They took him in the middle of the university sa San Carlos, sa Cebu. Tinutukan lang ng barel at sabi nila, M3 kami, which is a military intelligence unit. And they took him, hinandcuffed, in the middle of the campus, naka-blindfold siya, may baril sa ulo. They were walking him through the campus at lunch hour. Tapos nag-hail ng cab yung mga militar, and they pushed him in and brought him to a torture house. No? Ganun lang. That was martial law for you. Next slide po. This is Ryan, the guy with with polio, and my brother June, the one I showed you earlier. Ryan was a fugitive simply because he was a student leader in San Beda. Papasok na sana siya sa high school pa lang, third year high school. Pagpasok mo pa lang sa gates ng any university or any high school, merong malaking billboard, may malaking bulletin board. Nandun lahat ng student leaders, yung pictures nila. And when you enter the gates, huhulihin ka na agad ng military. The military will be right there at the gates. No? And why? Kasi matalino ka. So malamang kung matalino ka, student leader ka, writer ka ng Collegian, writer ka ng Little Bedan, yung high school newspaper nila. Kung matalino ka, malamang aktivista ka. So hindi na siya pumasok, nag-drop out na siya. And by age 19, there was a shoot-to-kill order for him. Next slide po. Eventually, at around 22, this is Ryan with his 2 young sons, he was smuggled out of the country to seek political asylum in France. Next slide po. Amnesty International po, these are conservative figures given in 1979. Conservative because this number does not even include any of my siblings. Kasi 1979 na itong figures na to. My siblings were arrested 1973 to 76. So 70,000 incarcerated, 34,000 tortured, 3,240 killed extrajudicially, 398 forced disappearances. Next slide po. Last May 2015, 75,730 claimants claimed for reparations under the new compensation law under Pinoy, which was giving compensation to the victims of martial law. 75,730, no? This is again a very low estimate kasi a lot of the claimants couldn't even make it to Manila or to the places where you could file. Kaya mababa tong figure na to. Pero bawat isa po dyan, may dossier, no? Meron kang ganyang kakapal, 1 inch thick na file to submit, no? Why do I know this? Because I filed for 4 of my siblings. And ang laman yan, birth certificate, school records, military records, diplomas, no? And affidavits from witnesses that they indeed tortured you or killed you or whatever. And yet, despite the 75,730 cases, Bongbong Marcos says, and may I quote, he says, that, yes, there were a few cases of human rights violations, but these are just a few cases that fell through the cracks. No? At propaganda lang daw ang mga human rights victims. So, I've been touring schools since 2012, since the time the book came out, to tell people, ang buhay ko po hindi propaganda. Totoo po ako. I saw my siblings in Camp Lapu-Lapu, in Camp Olivas, in Aguinaldo, in Bonifacio, in Crame. I could draw all these places, all these prisons that Marcos held political detainees. Next slide po. Despite that, lumaban pa rin po ang mga tao. This is an iconic picture, no? I think this is 1984 or 85. Next slide po. Okay, during the funeral of Ninoy Aquino, lumabas na rin po ang mga tao. Next slide. And this is a workers' rally. If you can see, hindi po kukonti ang tumututol sa mga Marcos. We were hundreds of thousands. At kasama na po ako dito sa mga to. Maliit po yung aming numero na nakaprotesta. Kung 15,000, that was a small rally. Next slide po. Okay, a rally in 1985 in Rizal Park. Next slide. Okay, I just used this slide kasi nakalagay, for Marcos, don't resign, just die. Kasi nasakit na si Marcos nun. Next slide po. And despite that, this is also 1984-85, the repression continued with the military. Next slide. This is a strike bust. At that point, I became a journalist and I was taking pictures like this. Ito po. So again, when people say, wala namang repression, sabi ko, hindi po, ako po kumuha ng picture na to. No? So I can really tell you what was going on. And again, the workers' strike being busted. Next slide. Okay. And now, we see historical revisionism of the martial law years. No? And sweet Jesus food, that's not honey. You're eating historical revisionism. And then he goes, si Marcos ang pinakamagaling na naging Pangulo ng Pilipinas. And we've seen this a lot of times, lalo na sa social media. Next slide po. And a lot of fake, fake memes, like this picture, supposedly of Marcos being given medals by none other by General MacArthur, pero fake yung medals, and they edited the photo so that it's Marcos's head, not the real soldier. Next slide. And I like this a lot because it comes from the UP Main Library librarian. She says, "Uy, mga Marcos apologists dyan, paki-unfriend na ako. Hindi tayo deserve ng virtual friendship na, hindi nyo deserve ang virtual friendship natin. Tapos umakyat kayo dito sa 3rd floor ng main lib, pakihanap ako. Isasaksak ko sa inyong yung records, documents, and photos nung panahon ng martial law. Saan ka naman nakakita na nakalagay sa police report na ang cause of death ay suicide daw, pero nabaril ng 27 times, 6 doon sa ulo, tapos luwa pa ang eyeballs. Magbasa kayo ng reliable sources, wag puro memes at YouTube revisionist videos." No? So, there was a lot of this going on right before the elections, and again, now because of the Marcos burial issue, marami na naman. Next slide po. Okay, Duterte quotes. No? We say, why is it relevant now? No? Because it's relevant because of quotes like this. No? "I will not run. I will run for president if only to save the republic. I will release Gloria." He already did. "Marcos was the best president of this country. 1,000, I will kill 100,000 people." Well, so far, ilan na ngayon? Over 1,000 ang namamatay, no? Sa extrajudicial killings. Next slide po. Okay, so we wrote the book Subversive Lives. Salamat sa Anvil because they published it to let the youth of today know that under Marcos' rule, there was a dictatorship, there was revolution, not by a few, but by millions of Filipinos. No? Yung People Power Revolution, sinasabi nila, ang galing-galing naman kasi 3 days lang, bloodless, maraming pagkain, maraming nagbibigay ng lobo, maraming nagsuot ng yelo, namigay pa ng bulaklak, nilagay dun sa barrel of the gun. It wasn't bloodless. That was just the tip, the tail end of the revolution. People, there were, like I said, there were 75,730 claimants, and there are more who were killed, tortured, raped, and all that. So it wasn't bloodless. Kami po ang nakadanas ng dugong yun. No? Next slide po. Look at the faces of these people. These are the people killed and disappeared during martial law. Tignan niyo po yung ages. 26, 21, 25, my brothers, 23, 24. Yan po, meron pang 16, si Boyet Mijares. Yan po ang mga nagbigay ng dugo. Hindi po bloodless yung revolution kasi sila po ang nagdanak ng dugo, no? At saka nawala. Okay. Ito po ang masaklap. So, right now, kami po ni Bobby, we're both very, very active in the libingan issue against Marcos being buried there. And we've gotten a lot of support, but also, grabe po yung pag-troll sa amin, no? You can just imagine. I'd like to show a very short video ng bawat bato. Okay? Just to show you how martial law victims and survivors feel about the issue.
Naapektuhan ako ng martial law. Nakulong ako ng 6 na buwan at kalahati sa Nakarami.
Habang ako ay sumisigaw, hindi naririnig ng iba.
Kunting kibot lang, nagkaroon ako ng kaso.
I was a rape victim. Doon din ako nakaramdam ng talagang mababa ang tingin ng lipunan sa ng mga kalalakihan sa babae. Mabuti pa yung basahan na wawash mo clean. Pero yung tao parang mahirap yatang linisin.
Ako din ay minolestya sexually.
Unang-una, ang libingan na ito ay itinalaga para sa mga bayani. At hindi namin kailanman maituturing si Marcos bilang isang bayani. Sa dami ng pagpapahirap niya, no, ilang dekada na pinahirapan niya ang ating bansa, ilang libo ang kanyang ipinapatay at ipinakulong. No? Paano natin siya tatawaging isang bayani?
Yung sinisimbolo ng mga bato na dadalhin dyan, sila yung mga pinahirapan ng martial law.
Ang dala kong bato ay dalawa, no? Yung bato para kay June Kimpo at yung bato para kay Ronald John Kimpo, mga kapatid ko po. Sa tingin ko po, sila po yung bayani. Kaya gusto ko na pong unahan yung, imbis na ho yung bangkay ni Marcos ang ilagay doon, sana ho yung bangkay na lang ng mga kapatid ko.
Ang buong sandaigdigan ay nakakaalam kung ano ang nangyari nung panahon ng martial law sa Philippines. Isang diktador si Marcos na hindi dapat tularan ng kabataan.
Sana po maulit ng ibang tao, no? Sana magawa nila itong pag-aalay ng mga bato na may pangalan ng mga martyrs and heroes kung saan-saan nagkaroon po ng struggles against the dictatorship nung panahon na yon. At saka sana po ay ulit-ulitin to ng mga mamamayang Pilipino para ipakita nila na hindi pa nila nakakalimutan ang mga krimen ni Marcos at higit sa lahat, hindi nila nakakalimutan ng mga tunay na bayani.
Sana mas dumami pa tayo para maging malinaw at maging matatag ang ating pakibaka laban kay Marcos noong panahon na yan. Kaya ngayon, tutulan natin.
Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Annie. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming here. Good evening. My instructions from Anvil was to talk about martial law and make it relevant to present times, to modern times. And that is what I'm going to try to do. I'll talk about martial law, and the title I chose is Not Again. Originally, it's Never Again, but I try to be more hip now in keeping with millennials. So again, there is a lot of talk about martial law coming back. Now, to make it even more contemporary, I would like to share something that just happened yesterday. Yesterday, I was at Camp Aguinaldo, specifically at the AFP General Command and College, AFP College, basically. So the schooling of Camp Aguinaldo. And for the purpose of my coming there was to talk about peace. The participants are colonels, battalion commanders, and would-be battalion commanders yesterday. There were around 160 officers yesterday at Camp Aguinaldo. But what happened there was, I was actually quite happy with what I saw. I came a bit earlier than my talk. My talk was at 10 o'clock. I came there at around 9:15. That's why I was able to hear the resource person before me. And the person who spoke before me was someone named Brigadier General Motril. I don't know him, but I heard part of what he said. And that made me feel better and more hopeful, because basically what he said was we should respect human rights. he talked about human rights and international humanitarian law. That was his topic. And he tried to be as convincing as possible. And what was particularly telling in that presentation was he was emphasizing that we are no longer the kind of military under Marcos, which goes to show that even the present batch of soldiers try to dissociate themselves from the previous military that has a bad record. Of course, we are not saying that the military now is spot clean, but at least there is far more consciousness now about human rights, and there is also that self-recognition that they have done something wrong in the past. Maganda po yung naging debate nung dumating ako doon. Of course, there had been questions. Some of the military men during the open forum were grumbling, saying that, bakit tayo palagi ang inaatake pagdating sa human rights, pero pag tayo naman ang agrabyado, walang sumusuporta sa atin, walang dumidepensa sa atin. So there were those grumblings, but what is good is they themselves, among the military, were answering those very questions, and they were trying to emphasize the point that they are the duty bearers, they have the foremost responsibility when it comes to human rights, they have the obligation, and that is part of their paycheck, sabi nga nila, according to their words. So mukhang meron namang pag-unlad at meron namang pagbabago compared to the things that happened so many decades back. Now, I introduced my topic with what happened yesterday at that training because I would like to emphasize that we have gone through a positive process, a positive change. At nakakatakot na muling mawala yung mga gains natin sa kasalukuyan. No? Bumalik tayo dun sa nakaraan. Because we are dealing with some present-day myths. For example, madalas nating marinig, it was okay during the time of Marcos. Some of those who say this are people we know, pwedeng kamag-anak, kaibigan, kainuman, o mga talagang everyday observers for a variety of reasons. Sabi ng iba, there was discipline during that time. Hindi ko alam kung saan nanggagaling itong obserbasyon na to, na may discipline nung panahon ni Marcos kumpara dun sa ngayon. Because I don't see the difference. Was it because at that time, traffic was better? Mas konti ang sasakyan noon kaysa ngayon. No? There was a famous anecdote at that time, though mukhang hindi naman yata naging totoo. Si Ariel Oreta daw ay ikinulong dahil sabi niya, kasi yung famous slogan at that time, sa ikauunlad ng bayan, disiplina ang kailangan. So, nagbiro siya, sabi niya sa ikauunlad ng bayan, bisikleta ang kailangan. Kaya hinuli daw siya ni Marcos at pinagbisikleta sa loob ng Campo Aguinaldo. No? That was a rumor at that time. Hindi ko alam kung urban legend o totoong nangyari yun. Pero at that time, the repression and the terror effect was very real of the discipline that was being imposed and that was being instilled. And there is no truth that that time was far more disciplined than today. Probably the people were more afraid then compared to today. The people were more terrorized and there was far less freedom compared to now. Another myth, the economy was better. Mas maganda raw yung ekonomiya nung panahon na yon, which is totally untrue. Nung nagsimula yung martial law noong 1972, there were some changes here and there, some adjustments in the market, but eventually talagang naging bankrupt ang Pilipinas by the first years of the 1980s. Kaya hindi masasabing dahil sa strong rule ni Marcos ay gumanda yung ekonomiya. Actually, even those countries that are being compared to the Philippines that also went through strongman rule, like Singapore, like Malaysia, even Thailand, at least yung mga bansang yon umunlad no? Gumanda yung ekonomiya nila, pero yung Pilipinas talagang na-bankrupt by the early 1980s. Tapos may mga katwiran na sana kung binigyan pa ng konting pagkakataon si Marcos, baka napaganda niya. But he he ruled the country for 14 years and since martial law, and even longer if we are to count the years before 1972. Pero it was really downhill since he started ruling the country, especially when he ruled it with an iron fist. Kaya hindi po totoo na under Marcos ay maganda ang ekonomiya, kundi talagang bumagsak siya. And of course, marami ring nagsasabi, as our elders said so. Kasi may mga nagsasabi, yung mga millennials, yung mga kabataan ngayon hindi alam yung nangyari nung panahon ni Marcos. But this is already being debunked by young social scientists who are also millennials. And they are saying people from our age, yung mga nasa 40s, nasa 50s, tayo actually yung mas marami dun sa mga kaedad natin ang bumoto kay Bongbong Marcos. So millennials are also studying. Perhaps they have different sources now, far different than the kinds of sources that we had during our days. Kaya importante para sa atin na basagin ang mga myth na yan. Sabi ni Marcos noong time na yon, history will be my judge, but just to be sure, I'll write history. Nagbiro siya, no? Pero unfortunately, yung biro na yan ay tinotoo niya. Kaya sa paghahari niya noong 1972, pinalitan niya yung konstitusyon. At yung konstitusyon na yan ay nabigyan siya ng kakaibang kapangyarihan. He enjoyed much too much powers compared to all the other presidents before him. And rewriting the Constitution, he was able to rewrite all subsequent laws, all laws that are in favor to him and his favored cronies. That was the 1970s. Noong panahon na yon, nasan ako? 1972, I can be considered one of those so-called martial law babies. Yung mga martial law baby na kung tawagin ngayon, sila or kami, yung mga lumaki under martial law. And there is something peculiar for our age. Kami yung pinilit mag-inculcate ng kultura ng subservience, ng pagsunod sa authority at pakikinig ng walang question. No? Lumaki kami dun sa ganong kultura, looking at a new society that is grand, that is noble, and parang tumitingala kami sa hari. According to a friend, Boying Pimentel, na nagsusulat sa Philippine Daily Inquirer, martial law babies. We were children when Ferdinand Marcos seized power to begin a 14-year reign of terror. We were told to worship the Marcoses, to believe in a new society, and ordered to sing stupid fascist songs praising his regime. Imelda wanted us to think of her as our mother. Yung kanta na yan, kaya ko pang kantahin hanggang ngayon, ano? Sisimula yan sa may bagong silang, something like that. By the late 70s and early 80s, most of us knew it was all a lie. We knew we were living under a brutal, shamelessly corrupt regime, and we began to fight back. So people like the family members of Susan, her brothers, her siblings, at yung mga kahenerasyon namin ay pumalag, no? Lumaban dito sa ganito. Isa sa mga dahilan bakit kami lumaban dahil binan yung Voltes 5. No? Siguro dun sa mga nandito ngayon na lumaki sa Voltes 5, nakita nyo yung grabing impact, ano? It was something that almost all of us were obsessed with. Kung ngayon, ano ba yung mga level ng obsession ngayon? Pokemon won't even compare, won't even approximate. Aldab, Sian Lim. At that time, yung talagang devotion namin dito, no? Nakaka-relate kami yung rebellion, yung struggle, etc. Pero kamukat-mukat mo, biglang tinigil ni Marcos yung Voltes 5. Galit tuloy kami, nagrevolusyon kami. No? Kaya there was a call to action. Of course, that is only half joking. Meron talagang merong real call for people, workers, farmers, and especially youth at that time to respond to the call of society. Yan ako noon, ano? Hindi ko na alam kung anong taon ito. Pero isa ako dun sa mga tumugon, along with hundreds of thousands of others who responded to the call to fight, to struggle, para baguhin ang lipunan, essentially, and to serve the people. Ngayon, bakit kinailangang makibaka? Yun ang paborito namin term at that time, makibaka. Over-centralization of power. Inelaborate na kanina ni Susan ito, yung dictatorship. We don't need dictatorship. No? Hindi pwedeng isang tao lang yung nagpapasya kung ano yung tama at mali. And this over-centralization has affected so many aspects of governance. Crony capitalism. I won't elaborate, pero ito yung isa sa mga dahilan kung bakit na-bankrupt ang ekonomiya natin. Noong panahon ni Marcos, meron din siyang paglaban sa so-called oligarkiya. Pero katulad ngayon, may mga pinabagsak na oligarkiya pero meron ng mga pinaboran na oligarkiya. No? There were favored oligarchs and there were other oligarchs who were made to really kiss the floor. At yung mga favored oligarchs na ito, ang crony capitalists, ang nag-bleed ng bansa natin dry. If you would recall the image shown earlier by Susan, yung picture ni Joel Abong that was in Negros, yung mga crony capitalists, kasama dyan yung mga nandun sa Negros, yung mga sugar plantation owners, at sila yung isa dun sa mga napaboran ni Marcos. As the Philippine Daily Inquirer put it, the most pernicious of these legacies is the politicization of the Philippine military. Through martial law, the armed services were transformed from a complement of the government to a co-governor. The overarching principle of national security started to dictate all sorts of government policy. To an extent perhaps unimaginable by today's generation, the military was in charge. Kung ngayon yung military adjunct lang natin, alalay, at that time silang hari, silang boss, sila yung kinatatakutan, military and the police. At ayaw na nating bumalik doon. Apart from that, crony capitalism, over-centralization, dictatorship, martial rule, ang isa sa mga pinakakitang-kita at that time was the extravagance, the opulence. No? Just the other day, bumili ako ng sapatos. Merong sale ang topsiders ng Sibago at 75% off. So sinamantala ko siya. No? Yung 6,000 pesos na sapatos naging less than 2,000 pesos na lang. Pero nung nagde-decide ako kung bibiling ko o hindi, later on, nag-decide ako, sige na nga. Pero nag-guilty pa rin ako because I have too many shoes. Nung binilang ko, halos 30 na yung sapatos ko, including the sandals, the flip-flops, and the leather shoes and the rubber shoes. No? Nag-guilty ako dahil 30 na yung sapatos ko. Why would I need so many shoes? Pero si Imelda had 3,000 shoes. Ano? Hindi ko ma-imagine kung what it feels like to own 3,000 shoes. Pero dininay naman ni Imelda yun, sabi niya, that's not true, I only have 1,060. Pero of course, that is the small part of the opulence that the Marcoses have been known for. The stories are legion, yung pag-hire ng private jet para mag-shopping, these are from personal accounts dun sa mga nakapunta dun talaga sa mga parties ng Malacanang. Bumabaha ng mga diamante at ibang mga jewels, no? Precious stones pag may party. Nakabilad sa table. Tapos yung mga blue ladies at ibang mga favored na tao, sige, kuha lang kayo dyan. You know? So the opulence, the extravagance, no? as exemplified by the shoes, yun talaga yung isa sa mga hindi masikmura ng mga tao. And it went hand in hand with the repression brought about by martial rule. Dahil sa martial law, napayagan silang gawin yun. Of course, human rights violations. Susan already narrated in harrowing detail the kind of human rights violations the military of Marcos was capable of. Sama na dyan ang curfew. Bumalik na naman ang curfew. Ewan ko kung na-lift na ngayon ang curfew. Na-lift na ba? Pero among the youth. Pero just a few months ago, curfew is unthinkable. Ngayon, curfew, bakit kailangan mong i-restrict ang mobility ng tao? And then the reinvention of vocabulary like salvaging. Kung dati ang salvage to rescue, to preserve something, no? To retrieve. Pero nung panahon ni Marcos, dahil napaka-common, salvaging has become synonymous with summary or extrajudicial executions. And again, that is becoming a fad now. Like a pig. Itong tinutukoy ko dito yung detailed description ng torture ng isang kaibigan na ikinulong ni Marcos. It was a grating shriek of helplessness, desperation, and terror. It was that kind of scream that issued from my throat every time my torturers spun the wheel around. Nung pinaiikot yung gulong, yun yung pangkuryente. It was totally involuntary, the automatic response of a body invaded by an alien current of 1,000 spikes, snaking through one's cells and nerves, as narrated by Obet Versola in Not on Our Watch. At yung example na yan, napakarami, napaka-common, napakalaganap ng panahon ng martial law. To be fair, it wasn't just Marcos. Ibig sabihin, hindi naman natigil yung practice at that time. At hindi rin yan limited sa gobyerno lang. No? And I, for example, have experienced torture myself. Torture and detention and an almost execution. But unfortunately, I experienced all that not from the military, but from my own comrades within the Communist Party of the Philippines, New People's Army, NPA. At yun nga yung ikunento ko sa libro na ito, no? To Serve Thy Comrades, where I, along with hundreds of other comrades, went through the same experiences of torture, and many of us were also summarily executed by the New People's Army. So, different sides, same practice. So, ano yung common? Siguro yung existence ng absolute power, existence ng conflict, existence ng kawalan ng paggalang sa human rights. And after that book came out, we discovered a few more brutal acts, like this one, the remains of Luz Añasco Laguna, which we exhumed in Cebu in 2006. Nung nahukay namin, we saw this giant boulder that crushed the body, apparently as a coup de grace. So the brutality was everywhere, and it has been continuous since then. It can strike anywhere and can afflict anyone. Yun ang lesson, yun ang masakit na lesson ng kasaysayan natin na sana naman wag nang maulit. The legacy is trying to get back if it hasn't really left. Which is why there is the need for vigilance. Kailangan aktibo pa rin tayo. We cannot be complacent, we cannot be relaxed, we cannot just be apathetic like many were during the time of Marcos. Especially now, when there are counter-currents, when there are revisionists, as Susan has put it, there are messages that counter what is glaring and what is obvious. Like this one that I have read from the Inquirer a couple of days ago, saying, "It grieves me more that at this time, when the memory of Marcos, who, it cannot be denied, also left arguably admirable footprints in our history, is being thrown mud at, and none of those he had counted on as friends had come out to say, 'Hey, cool it, the man had also done not only few but many wondrous things for us.'" Marami naman daw nagawang mabuti rin si Marcos at si Imelda. Siguro kung tatanungin mo sila, ano kaya yung pwede nilang i-cite? Folk Arts, Cultural Center, San Juanico Bridge, various infrastructure. Ibig sabihin, those things you can still do without having to impose martial law and without having to kill people. Infrastructure lang yan eh. Economic development lang yan eh. Why do you have to bandy it about that those happened during the Marcoses? Wala bang infrastructure before Marcos? Wala bang infrastructure after Marcos? But probably a more eloquent response to that is something written by someone who is very young. Rio Constantino, the son of a friend, which also became viral in social media, kaklase nung anak ko sa Philippine Science, he said in what he wrote on Facebook initially and then umikot, "It infuriates me to see people citing all the projects Marcos oversaw as if that would absolve him of his crimes. Because I also believe in a moral gradient. There is no such thing as absolute good or absolute evil, that even the worst men can commit a noble act. But the thing is, gradients had values. They go from 0 to 1, from black to white, from villain to hero. And everything Marcos did puts him overwhelmingly on the villain side of the scale. To say that he should be honored because of the theaters and parks he commissioned is to honor his torture of thousands to keep those projects afloat." And speaking of keeping those projects afloat, I'm reminded of that film center, no? Minadaling tapusin, gumuho, may mga nalubog sa quick drying cement, pinatapos pa rin dahil may minamadaling deadline. Speaking of villains, Marcos is not so much Voltes 5 but more the Bozanian Empire, if people will recall yung villains sa Voltes 5. An 18-year-old said that. Another millennial said this only today. Kita nyo, hindi ako nag-cramming sa preparation nito, no? Kanina lang to. "We, millennials, have been accused of everything from indifference through simple misinformation to willful ignorance." She was, on this part, referring to a video that had been circulating where millennials were shocked by accounts of torture na parang napaka-ignorante nila. Pero sinasabi nung writer, si Kay Rivera, that is not the entire reality of all millennials. Hindi naman kami lahat ay ignorante. She is saying, "I've never met anyone my age who seriously believed anything positive about the Marcos legacy. And the most impassioned Facebook commentaries against Ferdinand Marcos's burial in the libingan ng mga bayani have been penned in disgust by people my age." So we are not losing hope. Actually, we are very hopeful that the thinking people in social media are thinking like this. Of course, we know of all of the trolls. Minsan nga, I'm compelled to think na we are witnessing the dumbing down of a generation. But then, there are silver linings. So going back to Voltes 5, in our rally at the Luneta for the protest against Marcos's burial, sa libingan ng mga bayani, one of the artists there, si Toym Imaw, may hawak siyang laser sword, no? At sinasabi niya, dapat magkaisa lahat ng mga kulay para sa adhikaing ito. And he was calling for everyone to let's vote in, no? Magsama-sama raw tayo, kaya si Lapu-Lapu, kita nyo. Kaya mukhang kailangan uli nating magparinig ng boses, magpalakas. Especially in this situation right now. Oops. Sorry, nawala. Sometimes technology does not help us. Can we I'm on the tail end of my presentation. Sorry, this is not working in my favor. But the last parts of my slide, I just want to emphasize the need for us to be conscious of the problems that we had before and we may be facing again now. in this very difficult and sometimes even surprising times. Yung pagbabalik ng notion ng pangangailangan ng martial law, the justification of extrajudicial killings, and okay, yeah, there. Actually, this is a video. I was trying to play it. This was the video taken by my daughter on her way home. At nasa school bus sila, tapos nakita nila yung mama na nakabulagta, and obviously killed by gunshot wound. And in-affirm nga ng mga kalaro ko sa basketball na meron nga daw talagang pinatay very near our village. And I wrote about this in the Inquirer last week. And I was saying, yung ganitong phenomenon palapit na ng palapit sa mga buhay natin. We cannot be insulated from this. No? And it is very wrong on so many levels. The absence of due process, collateral damage, and so on and so forth. Kaya nandyan ulit tayo, sabi nga ni Bilbo Baggins dun sa The Hobbit. There and back again. We were there before, we might be there again. As a last point, I want to quote from what I wrote then. For many years, we have exerted all efforts to educate the security forces about human rights. The military, mga police, tinuturuan natin sila ng human rights all these years to make them understand that human rights are not their enemy but a guidepost to proper behavior, especially in uncertain situations. We have gained much headway in these efforts. Many in the police and military have fully accepted human rights principles and their practical application. Now all of this is in danger of being erased, nay, reversed, by a presidential declaration practically guaranteeing impunity. If you kill a criminal, I will protect you. And it continues to be justified up to this very moment. Kaya sana wag magtuloy-tuloy. Hindi ko alam kung paano mapipigil, but we can only rely upon ourselves to stop that. Yun lamang po. Maraming salamat.
Hi, Morty Ange. And just a question. I was asked by, because I represent an organization of OFWs in Europe, and they are actually trying to check in on what's going on in the Philippines, and obviously they're a bit worried about what's been going on. And they asked me to research on a couple of things, and including the current trend of revisionism, especially towards cleaning the Marcos name. I was wondering if you believe that what's been going on has been an organic outcrop of possibly time and misinformation, or has there been an actual effort, concentrated or even centralized effort, to spread that kind of misinformation? Thank you.
Okay. A friend in media had told me this, no? Actually, several friends in media had told me this, that before that the Marcoses were really preparing for 2016 elections. So much so that if you look at the history of the videos called Monkey Pride, no? There are videos created by Pinoy Monkey Pride. Ito yung mga videos na true lies about people power. Aquino Cojuangco, the Aquino Cojuangco story. It's all over YouTube, and they're beautiful videos, very, very graphic, very well-made na parang cartoons, no? To catch the eye of millennials. This started coming out mga 5 years ago. And ang chismis, and I'm just quoting a friend who said na 5 years ago, Amy Marcos nagpa-contest daw all over the world do sa pinakamagagaling na comms specialists, no? People who did PR work. And the contest was to create these videos so that they started feeding on social media things like this, feeding us information. And if you watch this, it's very bothersome, no? Because when you watch the videos, maybe initially the first 2 minutes is all true. They're really facts, no? It would say like People Power had 2.3 million people who came out on EDSA. But then again, it would say, but what was 2.3 million compared to the 80 million which was the population of the Philippines then? So biglang magpo-post ng mga questions na nakakagulat, no? And then it would say, where was Cory Aquino during the time of People Power? She was in Cebu. She was hiding in Cebu, no? And that's not true because People Power was a spontaneous uprising. And so there was really no leader, no? Kung may leader man siguro, makikita mo, it was Cardinal Sin who called on people sa radio to come to feed the soldiers in Krame. But the point is, if you watch this Pinoy Monkey Pride videos that are fed to you, you would believe it, no? Kasi ang daming facts, quote-unquote facts daw. And then, itong mga articles that come out, Get Real Philippines and things like that. So, was it organic? I think it was very planned. It was very, very clever, actually, to really hit the millennials, hit the biggest voting population of 2016.
Yeah, that's very true. A lot of money has been poured into this. So it's not organic or spontaneous. It was well-resourced, well-planned, and participated in by many who have also received resources for this kind of thing. And we're in this for the long haul. Kasi social media na ngayon ang labanan ang arena So dyan sila nagbuhos ng resources. And they have bottomless resources. And alam natin kung saan nanggaling yung bottomless resources na yon. So they're still able to use it up to now.
Question.
It seemed that it was acceptable because, in fairness to Duterte, he never really hid his he never really hid his thoughts. He's always been transparent about his support towards Gloria and Marcos. Still, the people voted him in. So, your thoughts po on how that has become an acceptable collateral damage for some of the population?
The support for Duterte as a person, as a president, is very real. We cannot discount that. Totoo yun. Hindi yun manufactured. Yung boto sa kanya, around 39% or so of the total number of voters na bumoto. Totoo rin yun, which is quite high. Pinoy Aquino was a bit higher in 2010, around 40% plus yung bumoto sa kanya. Pero si Duterte, it's not bad at all, yung 39%. And what is really also telling was the kind of support that he continued to generate after the elections. Mas dumami pa. Kaya yung survey result na 90+% approval rating, I think that is also true. Though that doesn't mean that I'll have to agree with the man. Dahil kahit na majority yung sumusuporta sa kanya, no? Probably a lot of things are going for him. Yung disgruntlement, no, from the everyday annoyances sa society nakatulong sa kanya napapunta. Plus, we'll have to admit the man is quite charming and charismatic. Kaya even people who normally would be turned off by excesses and abuses, by human rights violations, somehow find him tolerable for now. Women, feminists who normally are violently reacting against any form of sexism also somehow find him acceptable. Kaya he is also quite a phenomenon in a way. But that, of course, cannot be assumed to be static and won't change, no? Dahil Marcos in his time also enjoyed considerable support from the population. And even until now, there are quite a number of people who still recognize him and support him. In Ilocos, he is very much regarded. Kaya yun, yung ano siguro, sa madaling salita na sagot dun sa tanong mo, he still enjoys considerable support, which makes it even more challenging to disagree with his policies that are utterly wrong. But we should not stop there.
Right before the elections, no, umikot ako ng bansa for 3 months talking to college students. And I had the opportunity to go to CDO, Cagayan de Oro, and Iligan, no, in universities there. So when I would talk about martial law, I talked about my family and our experiences under martial law. People were very receptive, no? Pagdating ng open forum, the first question in these 2 cities were, what do you think of Duterte? No? So I would answer, well, I'm worried because there are certain things that he has said that allude to martial law again or declaring martial law again. The minute I said that, makikita mo in 3 campuses, no, in CDO and Iligan, MSU, tapos Xavier University, and one more. Yung open forum na, once I said that, biglang 10 people line up on each of the mics, no? And they would start grilling me on Duterte and my views on Duterte. Ang sasabihin nila, how sure are you that he will declare martial law? And I would answer, yeah, I'm not sure at all, but that's what he said. I'm just quoting him, you know? And the more I quoted Duterte, lalo silang nagagalit, no? And for me, na taga Manila, na siguro hindi ako masyadong madala sa Mindanao, nagulat talaga ako. In CDO to Iligan, I would travel by van, no? And the entire buildings, mga 2-story, 3-story buildings, would have the entire side of the building with tarpaulins ni Duterte Marcos. There was no Cayetano posters. It was Duterte Marcos. Notably, there were no LP posters. There was no yellow poster except for one, kay Kiko Pangilinan. And I was so surprised because people really would wrap their cars in tarpaulin with Duterte Marcos. No? Sabi ko, wow, ibang klase to. This was the first time I saw na ganito pala kalakas yung suporta para kay Duterte. And if you ask people, why do you think so highly of Duterte? And then they would say, oh, because, you know, wala nang crime wala nang drugs ang Davao. And I would say, napanood nyo ba yung CNN report na over the last how many years, 400 children who were supposedly selling drugs were killed? Children, you know? And the more they would get angry. So, anong sinasabi ko? There is real support for him. No, I don't know why. Yun nga, siguro, because he is charismatic, because he says things that parang gut level, pero people see it as honest, no? And then there was also the angry vote or the disgruntled vote. Yun naman yung sa Manila. I think people were equating their anger towards the traffic, towards MRT, towards, you know, the flooding in Manila. And because of that, I will not vote for Pinoy's candidate. Ganun lang, no? So it's medyo mababaw para sa akin na, dahil lang doon, it's a disgruntled and angry vote, which I thought was, you know, sayang yung boto mo. But yeah, I think si Bobby's right. There is real support for Duterte, at least until now. No?
Ang masakit naman doon, dahil lang dyan, we are willing to let Gloria and Marcos reappear.
Well, I'm waiting for people to again be vigilant and to again be vocal. Katulad nga na sabi ni Bobby kanina, pareho kaming martial law baby. We were taught only to follow. But eventually, lumaban din kami because we all knew it was a lie. So baka sana mangyari rin yun in the near future.
We have maybe just one question na lang, sorry.
Good evening. My name is Ashley. I'm a teacher. First of all, I'd like to thank you for being here and sharing your stories with us. I know it might not be very easy reliving those memories. So thank you very much. My students are here, and I'm sure they really appreciate hearing those stories. My question is for Ms. Quimpo in particular, but maybe Mr. Garcia can also talk about this. You mentioned that your brother, I forget which one, who taught in Ateneo was protected by the Jesuits. And you said something about how they threatened the government or the military by saying that the full force of the church will come upon them if they do anything to harm him. Can you talk more about the role of the church then? And maybe you can expand on maybe what kind of role the church can play today. Yeah, thank you.
The church then was a very militant church, no? In fact, in the Communist Party, there was a particular sector or a particular branch called the Christians for National Liberation, which was primarily church people, mostly Catholic priests and nuns, no? Pero kanya na under the Communist Party, National Democratic Front. But I think the church was very moved by the changes of Vatican II, which was basically changes made, I think, in the late 60s, from Rome saying that that the church should be more, compassionate towards the real problems of the people. And so the church then, talagang lumalabas yung mga pare at madre into the barrios. They were in the worker strikes. They were the ones who were protecting students. Nakakuan sila, naka-sultana at saka naka-belo at lahat in full church garb. They would protect the students during rallies. No? So if the police came to attack you, they would first have to hit a seminarian or a priest or a nun. And then, like we see, Cardinal Sin was the one who went on radio to call support for the coup d'etat ni na Enrile and sino ba to? Si Ver or si Ramos, hindi pala si Ver. I'm sorry, si Ramos, no. So yeah, and when they heard Cardinal Sin, people came in the millions, diba? So yeah, the church then was very, very solid, very. They had one voice, and it was for the poor and pro-poor.
The second question, what now? Yun daw ang question. Let's answer the question of the gentleman and the what now nga ba? How will we deal with what's happening now with President Duterte and all this talk about judicial killings and all that?
Siguro the question of how can be answered on a per issue basis, very specific. For example, with respect to the burial of Marcos at the libingan ng mga bayani, we have organizations like the one we are involved in, ni Susan, yung duyan ng Magiting, and we have organized a series of activities para doon. For the issue of extrajudicial killings, palakas na ng palakas yung yung protest voice, especially sa international. So probably you can lend your voice by writing letters to the editor or using social media and the other ways that we have employed effectively before, organizing ourselves and doing human rights education in schools, especially among the young ones. And forums like this, siguro, kailangan lang nating tuloy-tuloy pa.
Can I answer? No? I'll take my cue from the millennials. No, it was a 19-year-old girl who started that cardboard protest, diba? She wore this cardboard sign saying basically that she was also a candidate for killing, kahit hindi siya drug addict, something to that effect. And she started by riding the MRT and walking to school with this cardboard sign. And that was just one girl, no? And what happened was a lot of other people picked it up, and more students in schools started walking around their school campuses with cardboard signs. That is one way, one very active way of protest. Another millennial group, Akbayan Youth, when Marcos, the picture I showed you of Bongbong Marcos with the red bow tie, that he was singing "We Are the World" in this yacht party He had a bow tie that was red and it was blinking. No? So Akbayan Youth, they were only 6 people. No? They wore a red tie, red bow tie, and they went to the place in Cebu where Bongbong Marcos was supposed to give his usual spiel, yung candidacy spiel niya. And 6 lang sila. These young people brought this picture that I showed you of Marcos Mandarambong and wore the bow tie na pula, and they just stood there. They didn't even say a word, no? And what happened was the media rushed to try to take pictures of them. One of them grabbed a bullhorn and was going to start to, say things about Bongbong, but a Marcos supporter grabbed the bullhorn. So they just stood there, 6 sila, and because they were so, they just had pictures, small pictures, this size lang, and the press all rushed to them. So walang press na nag-cover kay Bongbong. They got all the press. And it was very, very effective, no, sa media. So, hindi na uso yung malalaking protesta. Although nag-rally kami, we were part of the organizers of the Luneta rally last August 14th. Pero ang uso na ngayon, small pocket protests of 6 people, of 1 person on the MRT train with a cardboard sign, no? Ganon po yung ating protesta. You don't need to come out in thousands. It would be nice, pero not necessary. Yun po.
Well, okay, just one more, very quickly.
I feel that this topic is much too important for the little time it has been allotted. And I feel that it ought to be given more elbow room to be discussed, because really there's too much that's disgusting that's happening today. If you'll notice, all the initiatives against this so-called drug war emanates from the top. It's a top-down approach. Where is the citizenry in it? Where is the community in it? Where are the 42,000 local governments, the barangay governments, in which the barangays in which all the drug lords as well as the drug victims reside? If you talk to me about 600,000 with nowhere to place in jails, divide that into 42,000 barangays, and you'll end up with 12 here, 24 in another barangay, numbers that are entirely manageable. But the trouble is, we have failed, and I think this is the crux of the matter. After EDSA, I was very much a part of the first quarter storm in 1970. After EDSA, we failed to carry on with the empowerment that we started. And so now we are so utterly disempowered, so that even a chief of police, who is supposed to be our chief public servant in the enforcement agencies, is able to dictate to his men who to kill, who to arrest, and who to let go. We can't have this. We are turning our society into a barbaric society, you know. So I'm just saying, I think this is a book authorship affair, no? I think, ma'am, you should make use of the teach-in experience you had during the 1960s and 70s and bring this message, have this message discussed all throughout, because the fact is, while they monopolize the media, we are all passive. We are all inutile. No? You can't have democracy with a passive citizenry. So we have got to get our local communities involved, I think, and assert their authority over their local governments, which are the barangays, the municipios, the provincias, and the regional governments. Sorry, but it just occurred to me that everybody's been talking about what's happening at the top, what's being commanded from the top, but no citizenry or no community's voice is being heard in all of this. Thank you.
Like, Okay. Quick reply from Bobby.
Thank you very much, sir. We fully agree, and we cannot agree with you more. And indeed, this policy really came from the very top. It was imposed from above. I would strongly suggest that everyone read the article of Time magazine that is going the rounds sa social media. The title is "The Killing Time Inside Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte's War on Drugs." Dito, yung pinakita na imposed from above yung seriousness ng drug problem. We're not saying that drugs is not a problem. No? Problema siya. Pero the way it was played up as if it is the primordial concern of every Filipino citizen now, as compared to, say, poverty, corruption, yung starvation, etc. Biglang siya yung naging number one. Pero this Time magazine article has put in statistics saying that, for example, compared to other countries, our drug problem here in the Philippines is relatively in the medium side. No? Mas malala pa sa Australia, mas malala pa sa UK, but they have not reached the kind of justification such as those killings are happening the way we are doing it here in the Philippines. This is so bad and this is so serious.
Susan. Okay. On that note, we'd like to thank Bobby and Susan for this very short. Maybe we'll invite you again for a longer workshop or maybe talk with all these millennials, teachers, and those who are concerned about our future. So thank you, Bobby and Susan, and thank you, audience, for coming to this panel. You can purchase Susan's book. Sorry, yung kay Bobby, we're reprinting it at the moment. All these martial law books are available at the National Bookstore store there, pop-up store. And if you want to let them sign, you can just approach them outside to sign the books. Thank you very much.